Hey, do you guys remember that one Atlas Conclave Augment that did very little damage and made it so you couldn't jump? Well, you still can't jump, but now it does good damage. I'd even go as far as saying it does pretty good damage. Don't believe me? Now let me show you. You might be wondering how all this works, and there are a few steps involved in it, but I'll try my best to explain all of it. In order to recreate what I did, you'll need the Rumbled Augment, Breach Surge, Condition Overload, Petrify, a Panzer Vulpaphyla, and the Archititron. If you've been playing the game for a while, you probably know where I'm going with this, but for those who don't, I'll be explaining it shortly. Basically, what this build tries to do is to stack as much damage multipliers onto each other to make up for Rumble's low base damage. If this is your first time seeing a video from me, please stick around until the end, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll be making a lot more videos like these in the future, so it will be well worth your time. A quick disclaimer before we continue with the rest of the video is that this build is by no means endgame based. I created it mainly to be a different way to play Atlas, since most people only use him for his first ability. So you won't be able to one-shot level 2000 enemies, but it'll still be a lot of fun and it will complete anything that you want to do outside of endurance. So with that, let's get on to the video. The main part of this setup is the Rumbled Augment. What this augment does is basically turn Atlas into one of his rumblers. It gives him rock armor similar to Iron Skin and disables all of your weapons, and instead allows you to throw boulders. It also prevents you from jumping, crouching, and sliding. These boulders do 100 direct impact damage and 75 radial damage in a 3-meter radius with no fall off. The boulders also have 0% crit chance, but they do have a 12.5% status chance. Rumbled is a pseudo-exalted weapon, so the stats can be buffed by the mods on your melee weapon, but it is unable to use heavy attack mods, range mods, combo mods, attack speed mods, and crit mods. I know it doesn't sound good from how I'm explaining it, but don't worry, it'll quickly get better. Breach Surge is the second part of this combo, and you get it by subsuming Wisps to the helmet and then infusing it on your Atlas. You can use it to replace either your first or second ability, but I'd probably go with the second one because Tectonics is kinda bad. Breach Surge does 3 main functions in this setup. First, it blinds enemies and opens them to stealth multipliers. Enemies that are blinded would take 700% extra damage from melee attacks, which the attacks from Rumble are classified as. The other thing that it does is that blinded enemies have a chance to create a spark when hit. These sparks have a damage multiplier and status chance that scale with power strength. This makes the sparks capable of one-shotting certain enemies, and if it doesn't kill them, it is likely to proc radiation on them. This will be really useful when you consider that Rumbled is able to benefit from condition overload. The last main ability in use will be Petrify. Petrify is Atlas's 3rd ability, and it's quite underrated. Petrify has this unique ability where petrified enemies receive 50% more damage from all sources. This works by reducing the enemy's damage resistance. For example, most Redeemr enemies have cloned flesh. Cloned flesh has a 50% damage resistance against gas damage, but when enemies are petrified, it will be reduced by 50% and they'll be neutral to gas damage. Petrify also freezes enemies in place, which makes it easier to headshot them, which is yet another multiplier. The Panzer Vulpaphyla is one of the other parts of this combo, and it is one of the new infested pets on Deimos. The Panzer is used here for 2 main reasons. The first reason is because of its preset mod Panzer Devolution. What this mod does is basically make it so that your companion just never dies. The other reason is because of its other preset mod Viral Quills. This mod is basically a mini Sarin, but instead of spreading corrosive, it spreads viral. And if you don't know, what viral procs do is the first proc increases damage by 100%, and at 10 procs it increases damage by 325%. So basically it's just more damage. Rumbled has this weird ability to basically copy the passive of whatever melee weapon you have equipped. This is as long as you are able to meet the requirement to do the passive. I'm guessing this has something to do with the way it was ported from Conclave, but this works exceptionally well when paired with the Archititron. The Architectron has a passive that increases the range of its radial slam attack by 1 meter for every kill, stacking up to 10 kills. This range is added onto the base range of Rumble, which gives you around 13 meters of range on a melee attack. Another benefit of this is that Rumbled has no way to do a slam attack, so you never lose a charge unless the time runs out, which means unless you aren't able to kill something, you're always going to have that range. If you don't have the Architectron, then a good alternative is the Jacket Tag or the Sibir. The Jacket Tag doesn't have a passive, but it does have an augment mod that makes enemies explode, dealing blast damage on death. This damage is based on a percent of the enemy's health and scales with condition overload, but it is reduced by armor. The Sibir has a passive that gives it a flat 50% status chance increase after doing a heavy attack. If you do a heavy attack then go directly into Rumbled, the increased status chance will last for the entire duration of the ability. If you combine this with the build I'm about to show later, then you'll have an almost 100% status chance, which would really benefit condition overload. I haven't been able to test this because, yeah. While I do think both of these builds are pretty good, I don't think either of them are as good as the Architectron's increased range. For the Atlas build, I focus mainly on having strength and range while keeping duration and efficiency positive. The more strength you have, the higher the base damage of Rumbled will be, and it also increases the damage multiplier and status chance of Breed Surge. Range increases the range of Petrify and Breed Surge. You don't need a lot of it, but you just need enough in order to cover the room you're in. Duration and efficiency are basically self-explanatory. For the aura, I'm currently using Growing Power, but for most of the footage you'll see I've been using Steel Charge. They both work really well, but Steel Charge becomes redundant when you consider things like Arcane Fury. Prime Flow is somewhat of personal taste, but I find it really useful since I have to cast Petrify and Breed Surge quite often. Arcane Fury is here because even though Rumbled has 0% crit chance, stealth damage hits are able to keep it up almost 100% of the time. Arcane Energize is here to help with the energy issue, and if you have it at a high enough rank, you should always be able to have energy. If you don't have Arcane Energize, then you can just use Xeneric. The Architectron is being used here as a stat 6, so most of the stats you see on your screen won't be that useful. You just need to focus on the mods on it. The most important mod here is Condition Overload. Condition Overload increases your damage for each status effect affecting the target. Melee Prowess, Saxum Thorax, Voltaic Strike, and Volcanic Edge are all here just to increase the status chance for Condition Overload. I'm running Corrosive and Heat because they're both able to strip armor, and when combined with Petrify, they do a lot of damage to Grineer enemies. Smite Grineer is being used as yet another damage multiplier. This can be switched out to whichever faction you're running against. I don't yet have the primed version, but they're about twice as good as this one. If you have an Architectron Riven with status chance, you could probably replace Melee Prowess with it. Most of the mods in my Panzer Vulpaphyla are personal preference. You only really need 2 mods, which are the preset mods. If you have Panzer Devolution and Viral Quills, you can basically fill up the other slots with anything you want. So yeah, that's all the different parts of this build, and I hope I was able to properly explain how they all work together. Like I said before, this is by no means an endurance build, but I was able to do a 1-hour solo Steel Pad survival with it, and it was still able to kill the enemies relatively easy. I could have gone slightly further with it, but I didn't have all the equipment that I needed, and I kinda got bored. While messing around with this build, there was a few things that became very clear to me that needed some sort of buff or change. The main one being the ability to not jump. Warframe is a game with a lot of verticality, and not being able to jump greatly hinders this. Just giving the ability a single jump would be really useful. Another change that I'd like to see is I wish that it benefited from the combo counter. That way it can use Weep and Wounds to get a decent status chance, and it will also get the damage buff that Exalted Weapons have from the combo counter. Increasing the base status chance will also be a very welcomed change. If you've been playing with the Rumbled Augment a lot and you have other suggestions for how it could be improved, leave them down in the comments section, and who knows, maybe somehow DE will find this video and you'll see your comment and add that very change. It's very unlikely, but who knows. That was all for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, share it with someone who will find it useful, and subscribe for more content like this in the future. We're about 100 subscribers or so away from 1,000, and I'd really appreciate it if we could hit that really soon. If you're already subscribed, I really appreciate you, and thank you for helping my channel out. And that's all. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful new year.